Hey everyone, before we jump into today's chapter, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you'll never miss a new audiofic. Your support really helps keep these stories coming. Now, let's dive in.
Winterfell, the day the world ended. Sansa Stark was once betrothed to the monster known as Joffrey Baratheon. He died. She was wed to Tyrion Lannister. She considered their marriage annulled. Later, she married the monster known as Ramsay Bolton, and while he died at her hands, Sansa smiling as he met his fate. The point is he died. Ever since, Sansa remained alone. She told herself she would never marry again unless it was entirely her choice. Nearly 5 weeks before the end of days, she had coldly watched as Jon of Houses Targaryen and Stark, the man she had long thought of as her half-brother, married the Dragon Queen, Daenerys Targaryen, in front of the Heart Tree in the Winterfell Godswood. Now, 3 weeks later, she stared at 3 dragons screeching in the sky, flying toward Winterfell with an army of dead men, women, and children charging below at inhuman speeds. In her chamber, Sansa stood tall as Lady of the Ancient Castle, flanked by Davos, Arya, Missandei, and Tyrion. She watched as one dragon, Rhaegal, broke away from the formation and turned south, probably toward the Vale. To her right, a roaring fire blazed in the hearth. Behind her stood her bed. To her left sat the empty wheelchair that once belonged to her younger brother, Bran, her dead brother. Sansa's mind flashed back to the moment Bran slumped forward in that chair, blood dripping from the corners of his mouth. It had been a week and a half after Jon and the combined armies of the living, the North, the Red Priests, the Second Sons, Riverrun, and the Vale, and even Jaime Lannister without the Lannister armies, marched north to meet the dead head-on. Bran had been warged into Rhaegal, riding the dragon's mind because Jon did not dare. When Rhaegal was killed by the Night King, Bran died with him. His mind had been in the dragon for too long, unable to escape back to his own body. Arya had been the first to see him slump over. She grabbed her brother and screamed at him to wake up. Sansa closed her eyes as tears spilled at the sound of Arya's desperate cries. She had felt a small hand grip hers and opened her eyes to find Tyrion looking up at her with sorrow. He knows what this means. Her bottom lip trembled. Gently, she pulled her hand free from his and walked to Bran's body. She placed one hand on Arya's shoulder and wrapped the other around Bran's still form. She held them both as the others in the room watched another Stark die. And with his death, they all knew their own might follow soon. An hour later, Bran's body was burned to keep the Night King from raising him. Now all they could do was pray to the old gods and the new that the army of the living would return, at least some of them. But everyone knew Bran's loss meant one dragon was gone. Drogon was the last still living after Viserion had been taken by the Night King during that doomed mission beyond the wall. They hoped Daenerys and Jon would return with at least part of their army. That's what they hoped. But Sansa knew better. While Arya and Lyanna Mormont discussed the castle's defenses, Sansa had felt a pain in her chest an hour after Bran's death that told her the truth. She thought back to how she had once treated Jon, coldly, just as her mother had. She had called him her half-brother, avoiding him when she could. Was it ever any surprise he left for the wall without saying goodbye? She remembered standing in her chamber after Bran's funeral pyre, rubbing her chest in an attempt to ease the dull ache there. It didn't fade. The pain throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat. It was how she knew. The man she had once ignored, the man who had taken her in after she fled King's Landing and again at Castle Black after she escaped Ramsay, the man who fought for her and reclaimed Winterfell. Her cousin, her brother in all but blood, was dead. Jon was dead. She couldn't tell anyone, not without breaking what little morale they had left. So she kept it to herself for the next 3 weeks, when the dead screamed and raced toward the castle. And now she had held Arya's hand in one of hers, Tyrion's in the other, as the last two dragons rained fire upon the living. Her mind went back to Bran's revelation that Jon was the true-born son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegal Targaryen. She remembered the shock on everyone's faces and how Jon had stammered in disbelief. I, he had started, before Arya ran to him. You're our brother, she told him. In that moment, Sansa didn't see the deadly assassin Arya had become. She saw a little girl comforting a boy who had just learned the greatest secret Westeros would never know, at least not until after the Night King was defeated. Minutes later, Jon revealed what had happened on the boat to White Harbor, and how he felt about Daenerys. Sansa, Arya, and Samwell had all been stunned. She's my aunt, Jon had gasped, leaning back against the wall with a look of disbelief. By the gods, I fucked my aunt. Arya then chuckled. That is the Targaryen way. Not funny, Jon muttered before looking to Sansa. She had sighed. You know my feelings about her. She's unpredictable, and she held up a hand to stop his protest. You told her about the danger coming, and she still demanded you bend the knee before she would aid us. In the end, she agreed after she saw the dead, Jon countered. I told you, Jon, Sansa said quietly. We lost people. People who are now part of the army of the dead, and she lost the dragon. Who knows if the Night King can raise one to fight for him? There's no reason to believe Cersei will send any aid, even if she swore it. We have to assume we're on our own. We'll have a plan ready, Jon replied, taking a seat across from her. You know my feelings toward her, Sansa said. Do you love her? I don't know, he whispered. Sansa bit her lip, her mind imagining her grandfather screaming as he burned before the laughing Mad King, and her uncle Brandon strangling himself in a desperate attempt to save him. Rage flared at the thought of that madman's direct bloodline standing in her halls. But she knew Daenerys' dragons and army were vital. And she was also aware there was a price to be paid. You will have to marry Daenerys. Weeks after the wedding, the dead swept through Winterfell like a flood. Dragons burned the castle while whites tore apart the other defenders and innocent old men, women, and children. Arya gripped Sansa's hand, or perhaps it was Sansa gripping Arya's, as they watched the chaos. Tyrion stood pale and silent. Missandei and Varys looked stricken. A distant flame streaked past the window. Dany, blood-stained, on Drogon, both screaming as they burned the living to ash. The doors behind them burst open and whites poured in. Arya fought viciously as Jon had ordered her to protect Sansa at all costs. But Sansa watched helplessly as her sister was overwhelmed and ripped apart. Missandei, Tyrion, Davos, and Varys followed, screaming as they were torn to pieces. Then Sansa heard a familiar screech from the hallway. Jon, she cried, staring at the bloodied man. Former king in the north, former Lord Commander, former bastard, her cousin. His eyes glowed icy blue. I'm sorry, Sansa whispered before several whites pulled her to the floor. She fought the urge to scream as their teeth tore into her flesh. Darkness took her before she could finish. Winterfell, 8 years earlier. Sansa's eyes snapped open, and she sat up suddenly, gasping for air. She was underwater in her bathtub, warm water splashing over the sides with her sudden movement. Her hands flew to her neck as she panted, searching for the bite marks and blood she had felt moments ago, felt as blue-eyed monsters sank their rotten teeth into her. But her hands came away clean, no blood. She glanced at her arms, goosebumps rising, and then looked down at her body. She braced herself, half expecting to see scars, blemishes, or cuts like the ones she had in the dream. That dream, so vivid she could almost still feel the bite of those monsters' teeth, The bruising blows from Ramsay, the sickening violation, and the cold steel of a sword striking her down as Joffrey sneered from the Iron Throne. A dream, she told herself, her heart pounding. Just a dream, all of it, a dream. Her hands gripped the edges of the tub. Her breasts rose just above the waterline, her hair plastered to her scalp, strands clinging to her face. As always, she submerged herself again so the warmth would envelop her whole body. But this time felt different. It's like I woke from a deep sleep, she thought, shaking her head. But I don't remember sleeping. I was just underwater and... How long was I under? She brushed her hair back from her face and closed her eyes. The monsters came back to her. Winterfell under attack. The dragons. And then she saw him. Jon. Blue eyes. Bleeding. Why would I dream of Jon? Jon Snow avenged the Red Wedding, her voice said. She couldn't recall the face in the dim glow of what looked like Winterfell's great hall, but the voice was male. He is the White Wolf, the king in the north. White Wolf? King in the north? Jon? She stood in the tub, water streaming down her body. He's a bastard. That's impossible. She chuckled. Definitely a dream. A bastard becoming king in the north? Yes, just a dream. She stepped out of the tub, water pooling on the floor as she walked to the bed. She dried herself with the cloth laid out for her earlier by her mother, then moved to the other side of the bed to dress. I'll be seeing Prince Joffrey at our midday meal again. She smiled at the thought of the handsome prince, remembering how she was to wed him once she flowered. Someday I'll be queen and... You are Elaine, my bastard daughter. Another voice intruded, stopping her cold. A man's face appeared in her mind, unknown, yet somehow making her skin crawl. Who are you? Images followed. She was in the Vale, meeting Aunt Liza, places she knew she had never been. She shook her head. It's not possible. I've never seen these things, never been here. Then came another memory. You conspired with Cersei Lannister and Joffrey Baratheon to murder our father, Eddard Stark. Do you deny it? She froze. It was the same man from the Vale, glaring at her. She watched as a young woman, older than she remembered, slashed his throat. Arya? Her sister moved calmly to the table's edge, sheathing her dagger. Sansa remembered looking at the body with a surge of disgust she couldn't explain before ordering, "Burn the body." What's happening to me? Sansa whispered, clutching the sides of her head. She slipped from the bed, falling to her knees as more impossible memories crashed into her mind. Father, no! Stop him! Stop! She saw Ned Stark's head roll down the steps of the Sept of Baelor. Joffrey's laughter rang in her ears. I never lived this, but I remember it. She stood trembling. Just a dream, a vivid dream, but still a dream. Joffrey would never be cruel. He will love me. He will... I am sorry, my lady. Tyrion Lannister's voice interrupted, his eyes full of pity before he turned away. Sansa's legs wobbled as she clutched at her chest. Her hand was empty, yet she could feel a scroll within it. No, she said firmly, looking at the dress. It was a dream. Just a dream. Mother says I'll be betrothed to the prince. I love him. I will make him love me. I will be the lady he wants. I'll be a queen beside the most handsome king in all of Westeros. She unwrapped the cloth around her and began dressing, a smile returning to her lips. All a dream, she told herself again. It was all just a dream. To be continued.